The face tells the story long before the mouth ever speaks. And in that silent exchange, most people reveal everything they try so hard to hide. Every line, every pause, every unguarded flicker in the eyes becomes a brushstroke on a canvas that is always on display. Most men never learn how to read it, and fewer still ever learn how to paint it with intention. They fill the space with words, explanations, justifications, and noise, believing that volume equals value. But true power is not loud. It does not announce itself or rush to be understood. It does not defend its existence. True power is silent, and silence, when rooted in self-mastery, carries weight. In a crowded room, it is never the loudest man who commands attention. It is the one who says nothing and yet bends the atmosphere. The one whose presence feels heavier than his words, whose stillness creates a kind of pressure others cannot ignore. He understands that calm is not the absence of emotion, but dominance over it. Most men are conditioned to chase outcomes, to dominate conversations, to prove worth through effort and display. They perform, they seek validation in reactions. But elite men shaped by discipline, restraint, and inner structure, recognize something far more refined. They understand that influence begins before attraction, that respect forms before desire, and that presence speaks long before action ever takes place. Women sense this instinctively, not through logic or conscious analysis, but through intuition. They read the aura before the resume. They feel the shadow before the smile. They notice whether a man is grounded within himself or desperately auditioning for approval. This has nothing to do with conquest or tactics. It is not about manipulation or strategy. It is about perception. The sophisticated man moves like a ghost through social spaces, unrushed, unreactive, unreadable. He does not seek to impress because he understands discovery is far more powerful than display. He allows others to lean in rather than reaching out. Because the highest form of influence is not control over people, situations, or outcomes. It is control over the self. And once this understanding settles into your nervous system, once you feel it rather than merely hear it, your perception changes permanently. You stop chasing noise. You stop explaining your worth. You begin to move differently. And once you see this, you can never unsee it again. Number one, the silent recalibration. Why the sophisticated man stops trying to be understood. At a certain stage of psychological maturity, something subtle but irreversible happens inside a man, and it does not announce itself loudly. There is no ceremony, no applause, no external validation. There is simply a quiet recognition that being understood is not the same as being respected. For most of his early life, he has been conditioned to explain himself, to justify his intentions, clarify his emotions, soften his edges, and narrate his inner world so others feel at ease. This is not weakness, it is social training, a survival mechanism learned in environments where approval felt necessary for belonging. But elite self-mastery begins the moment he notices the cost of constant explanation. He realizes that every unnecessary clarification dilutes presence, that every defensive elaboration leaks authority, and that the more he rushes to be understood, the less grounded he appears. The refined man understands that silence is not emptiness, it is structure. Silence is the absence of chaos, not the absence of thought. Marcus Aurelius did not write to persuade others. He wrote to discipline his own inner world. He did not chase agreement or validation. He cultivated coherence. His power came from internal alignment, not external applause. Women, like all perceptive humans, are exquisitely sensitive to this internal order. They may not consciously articulate it, but they feel when a man's nervous system is regulated, when his emotions are not spilling outward in search of reassurance. This is where the aura begins to form, not as something mystical or performative, but as a biological and psychological signal of self-containment. A man who is not scrambling to be understood communicates safety through stillness. He becomes easier to trust, not because he explains himself well, but because his behavior is consistent across time. Trust does not come from words. It comes from pattern recognition. His presence settles the room without effort. He speaks less, but when he does, his words carry weight, not because he demands attention, but because attention naturally orients toward stability. There is no rush in him, no need to convince, no anxiety about being misread. This is the first realization most men never reach. Explanation is optional when your inner world is already aligned, when your actions speak with such clarity that silence becomes sufficient. Number 2, emotional stillness. As power, what women actually respond to under pressure. In moments of uncertainty, pressure, or emotional complexity, most men reveal more than they intend. Their tone shifts before their words do. Their posture tightens as if bracing for judgment. Their eyes scan the room, unconsciously seeking reassurance or approval. These reactions are subtle, but they are loud to anyone who understands human behavior. The sophisticated man notices this pattern early in life and makes a quiet decision to walk a different path. He does not aim to become emotionless, nor does he indulge every feeling that arises. Instead, he trains himself to metabolize emotion internally. This distinction is critical. Suppression creates internal pressure that eventually leaks out through irritability, resentment, or impulsive action. Integration, on the other hand, creates calm. It allows emotion to move through the body without hijacking behavior. When a man can feel disappointment without broadcasting it, desire without chasing it, curiosity without grasping for control, something remarkable happens. His emotional landscape becomes unreadable in the most refined way. Not hidden, not closed off, but composed. This is where cinematic figures are often misunderstood. Characters like Thomas Shelby are not compelling because of danger, rebellion, or dominance. They are compelling because of restraint. Watch how they pause before responding, even when provoked. Watch how their breathing remains slow while others rush to fill silence. Watch how their eyes stay steady when the environment turns chaotic. These are not intimidation tactics. They are demonstrations of emotional regulation. Regulation communicates mastery, and mastery is felt, not announced. Women sense this immediately, often without being able to explain why. A calm man under pressure signals safety without weakness, strength without volatility. He does not spike the emotional temperature of the room. He stabilizes it. He becomes the shadow, not dark, not threatening, but dimensional. His presence has depth. You feel him even when he is silent. This emotional stillness is not passive, it is active restraint. It is the ongoing choice to remain centered regardless of external turbulence. It communicates that his inner world is not hostage to outcomes, reactions, or approval. And that signal is profoundly grounding to be around, because in a world of emotional noise, the man who governs himself becomes the quiet axis others unconsciously orient around. Number 3, presence over performance. why the elite man stops managing impressions. At a certain level of maturity, the sophisticated man stops curating himself for reaction and quietly steps out of the marketplace of approval, no longer measuring his words for maximum effect or adjusting his edges to fit the emotional weather of the room. This does not make him rigid or cold. It makes him anchored, internally weighted, unmoved by the need to impress. Performance always demands vigilance, a subtle tension beneath the skin, because it requires constant monitoring of how one is being received, interpreted, and ranked. Presence requires none of this. Presence is self-contained. The difference is almost invisible, yet decisive. A man who is performing is always slightly anxious, even when smiling, because his sense of value is outsourced to response. A man who is present arrives internally complete before the interaction even begins, already settled, already grounded. Women intuitively sense this distinction long before it is consciously named. They feel when attention is offered freely, rather than strategically, when interest is not a tool, but a byproduct. Presence carries a tempo that cannot be faked. It is unhurried. It does not rush to fill silence with noise or words with justification. It allows space to exist without apology. Silence in his orbit becomes textured rather than awkward. This is why refined influence feels effortless. He is not trying to lead the interaction, dominate it, or steer it toward an outcome. He is inhabiting it fully, inhabiting himself fully. His posture is relaxed, not because he's careless, but because there is nothing he is trying to prove. His movements are economical, precise without stiffness. His eye contact is steady, but never invasive, a calm acknowledgement rather than a demand. He becomes a masterpiece, not by seeking admiration, but by eliminating the hunger for it. The need to be seen dissolves, and paradoxically, this is when he becomes impossible to ignore. Attraction shifts here, quietly, from surface-level interest to deeper curiosity, because what strains to be noticed exhausts the senses, but what is complete within itself generates gravity. Mystery is not created by withholding information, but by being unreactive to judgment. When a man is no longer negotiating his worth in real time, others begin to lean in, not to validate him, but to understand him. What does not chase attention invites exploration. What does not pursue creates pursuit. And in this stillness, influence emerges not as a tactic, but as a natural consequence of inner coherence where presence speaks louder than performance ever could. Number 4, the end of reactivity, how self-mastery rewrites. Masculine gravity. Reactivity is one of the most expensive habits a man can carry because it exposes exactly where he is unfinished within himself. Every sharp reply, every rushed explanation, every defensive shift of tone reveals an internal fracture that has not yet been integrated. The elite man does not shame this discovery, nor does he dramatize it. He studies it with surgical calm. He understands that the world is constantly applying pressure, but pressure itself is neutral. It is the response that reveals mastery or immaturity. Between stimulus and response, there exists a pause, and within that pause lives power that most men never access. This is not philosophy meant to sound impressive. It is biological reality. The pause regulates the nervous system, slows the limbic reaction, and restores executive control. A man who can pause is a man who can choose, and choice is the foundation of authority. Women observe this far more closely than they admit, often without conscious awareness. They notice how a man responds when challenged, how he behaves when misunderstood, how his presence shifts when certainty dissolves into ambiguity. They watch whether he rushes to defend his image or allows silence to do the work. The man who does not scramble to correct, convince, or dominate communicates emotional intelligence without uttering a single line of explanation. He becomes emotionally authoritative because he is not seeking validation from the moment. He does not overpower tension. He absorbs it. He does not attempt to control outcomes. He remains centered, regardless of outcome. This centeredness creates stability, and stability is rare. People feel it before they understand it. Conversations unconsciously slow around him. Voices soften. Emotional volatility loses momentum in his presence. Others begin to mirror his composure, not because he demands it, but because nervous systems synchronize with the strongest signal in the room. This is leadership without performance, influence without strategy. The ghost quality emerges here, not as absence, not as emotional withdrawal, but as an ungraspable steadiness. He cannot be pulled into chaos because there is nothing reactive to hook into. He is present yet unreachable by manipulation. Calm yet not passive, firm yet not rigid. What cannot be shaken does not need to announce itself. It simply stands. And in a world addicted to noise, that quiet solidity commands respect without ever asking for it. Number 5, independence as emotional wealth. Why optionality changes everything. One of the most misunderstood concepts in masculine development is independence, because it is often mistaken for emotional distance, coldness, or avoidance, when in its refined form it is actually emotional wealth. True independence does not mean a man is disconnected from others. It means his inner stability is not outsourced to approval, attention, or outcomes. His sense of self remains steady, regardless of how he is received. His interest is genuine, but it carries no urgency. His desire is present, but it is not restless or demanding. This subtle distinction changes the entire dynamic of interaction. Neediness accelerates energy outward, creating pressure and imbalance. Desire, when rooted in self-sufficiency, settles inward and radiates calm. Women feel this difference immediately, often without being able to explain it. An internally fulfilled man moves differently. His tone is slower. His presence is grounded. He listens without scanning for validation. He expresses interest without attempting to secure it. When a man is nourished by his purpose, aligned with his personal rhythm, and anchored in self-respect, connection becomes a choice rather than a requirement. This optionality is deeply attractive because it removes emotional pressure from the interaction. There is no invisible contract being formed, no silent expectation that attention must be returned or feelings must be managed. The space feels clean. There is no emotional debt being accumulated. A sophisticated man enjoys connection without clinging to it. He can appreciate closeness without fearing loss. He allows space without retreating into silence or punishment. He understands that emotional freedom is not created by distance, but by non-dependence. He is present, yet complete on his own. This is where masculine gravity becomes natural rather than manufactured. There is no performance, no strategic withdrawal, no attempt to appear aloof. His steadiness speaks for him. People lean in because nothing is being pulled from them. There is no hunger in his energy, only availability. His presence feels safe because it is self-contained. And paradoxically, the less he needs connection to feel whole, the more others feel drawn to share space with him. This is not indifference, it is mastery. It is the quiet confidence of a man who knows that his value is internal and that any connection added to his life is an enhancement, not a lifeline. Number 6, the final integration, self-mastery as the only strategy that endures. Eventually, the sophisticated man arrives at a quiet conclusion, not through sudden revelation, but through long observation of himself under pressure. He realizes there is no technique that replaces inner order, no performance that substitutes for character, and no clever strategy that can outlast genuine self-mastery. He has seen men memorize scripts, postures, and tactics only to unravel the moment something unexpected occurs. In contrast, when a man disciplines his emotions, clarifies his values, and stabilizes his nervous system, something irreversible happens. Influence stops being something he chases and becomes something that follows him naturally. He no longer wakes up asking how to attract, persuade, or impress. Those questions feel juvenile, almost loud. Instead, he asks a quieter, more dangerous question. How do I remain coherent under all conditions? Praised or criticized, desired or ignored, winning or losing. This coherence becomes his signature. It is not flashy. It does not announce itself. It is felt. His aura enters the room before his words do, not because he tries to project power, but because nothing inside him is scrambling for validation. His shadow carries depth rather than threat. It suggests experience, not volatility. He moves through rooms like a ghost, present, composed, and memorable without effort, because he is not leaking energy through anxiety, neediness, or over-explanation. People sense that he is internally settled, and that unsettles them in a strange, magnetic way. This is not about superiority or standing above others. It is about completion. When a man becomes whole within himself, interactions stop feeling transactional. He is no longer trying to get something from people, and because of that, people feel oddly safe and seen around him. Conversations deepen without force. Respect emerges without demand. Others begin to sense themselves more clearly in his presence, as if his calm acts like a mirror that reflects their own inner state. Some rise to meet it, some retreat. Both reactions are information, and he remains unchanged by either. That ultimately is the highest form of influence. Not in control, not dominance, not manipulation, but a calm, grounded clarity that subtly reshapes the emotional environment, simply by existing, by being ordered inside, by no longer needing to be anything other than exactly who he already is.